I'm Ashley Fillippeli, and I'm an attorney at Triangle Smart Divorce.
And I'm Kaitlyn Hodgins. I'm also an attorney here at Triangle Smart Divorce, and today we are going to talk about collaborative divorce.
What is collaborative divorce?
So collaborative divorce is a process that we can use in North Carolina, and really what it is it's each party taking control of working towards a settlement in a way that meets everyone's needs and interests. It's a way to keep your case out of court and really work together to problem solve and come up with potentially unique solutions that you're not going to get in court.
Yeah, and I would say it's more about coming up with a solution and problem solving more so than it is one person winning or losing. It's really meant to be a process where everyone's throwing out ideas and listening to the other party and trying to figure out a way that we can accomplish these goals that they have with some creative thinking and amicably. Mostly.
Well, and everyone's there voluntarily. No one's forcing you to be there and do this process collaboratively, which can make it a little bit less contentious. You don't have a court telling you have to be there. You're there because you choose to be there.
Yeah, and I would say there is an unknown, there's a emotional cost when you're going through a divorce. Like everybody thinks about dollars and cents and how much they're going to pay to go through a divorce, but like when you're going through a high conflict custody case and you're in court, you're not only paying dollars, you're paying an emotional toll too. And so this helps kind of cut out some of that. It makes the whole process a little bit more pleasant to the extent that you can describe a divorce as pleasant. But it definitely is so much more amicable than going to court and cheaper. How would you say collaborative divorce is different from your regular divorce?
Well, again, like the first thing is it's voluntary. Everyone's there voluntarily. But I also think it's important to know that there are kind of three big things about collaborative divorce that really make it stand out. The first is that everyone is pledging to negotiate mutually. I mean, we're all doing this together, and the goal is to reach a settlement outside of court. The second is that everyone agrees that we're going to have an honest, good faith communication. We're going to freely exchange information. We're not going to hide things. Everyone's going to be open and honest during this process. And then the third thing that is very unique about collaborative divorce is when the process ends, all of the professionals have to withdraw. So if you are unable to reach a settlement, your attorney at that point has to withdraw. The experts that you maybe have used up until that point have to withdraw. Everyone withdraws. So that does make it a lot different than a traditional divorce.
Yeah, and to some of the things that you said about, everyone makes a pledge that they're going to, in good faith, provide information and documents and everything. And that cuts out so much of what is problematic sometimes in a regular divorce, I would say, is that you're chasing documents. From the other side, you may not be getting all the information you need, and you're only working on kind of half of the information when you're making these decisions. But this is okay, we're all coming in here, we're all gonna lay all the cards on the table, we're all going to look at the same documents, we're all gonna have the same information, and we're trying to reach a resolution from that.
Well, do both people need lawyers, or do they use the same attorney?
Both parties still need separate attorneys. And the attorneys can still, if I'm representing someone in a collaborative divorce, I'm still representing that person, but rather than figuring out how that person can win and come out on top, quote unquote, I am trying to talk to that person about what their goals are, what matters the most to them. And then I'm also trying to figure that out about the other party too. What's their goals? What means the most to them? And so in a way, you're both attorneys are working together for the joint mutual satisfaction of both parties.
Well, it's in the name, right? Collaborative divorce. The idea is for the attorneys to collaborate with their clients all together in one setting and come up with these solutions. Okay. So it's in the name.
Can you talk about the process of collaborative divorce?
Yes. So once each party agrees that they do want to do collaborative divorce, each party retains an attorney that practices in that area. But the first main step is you both agree that you want to do the collaborative process. Once you have each retained an attorney that does collaborative divorce, then you're going to have that first initial meeting where everyone is going to talk about their expectations and everyone's going to sign a participation agreement. The participation agreement is going to spell out those core elements, talk about how we're going to do all of this honestly, we're all going to share information, that the process is confidential, and also include the terms about attorneys withdrawing if the process reaches an impasse at any point.
And then the whole process is really based on like a series of shorter meetings. So, we're used to going to mediations where we go to mediation at 10 a.m. and if we might still be there at 10 p.m. We're there all day. The attorneys are in a room with their client. The other attorneys in the room with their client. It's separate. The mediator's going back and forth. These meetings are generally limited to around 2 hours, which I appreciate because I feel like in mediations when you're there for 10, 11, 12 hours, people are starting to get annoyed and
100%
hangry,
annoyed.
and no one wants to be there anymore, and it's really hard to make decisions that way. So what doing these little like bite-sized meetings can do is that you're doing it for a short enough period that hopefully no one's getting frustrated enough to kind of disrupt the process, and you can there's homework to do afterwards. So like if we are talking in a meeting about who's going to stay in the marital residence, and we need to know, can one person refinance the mortgage or can they assume the mortgage? And we don't know that in the first meeting. So then at the end of that meeting, we might say, okay, husband, your homework is to go contact your lender, see if you can assume the mortgage, see if you would be approved for refinancing the mortgage. So that then when we come back, and we go ahead and pick a date, but then when we come back, we've got answers to those questions.
Yeah, and everyone's in the same space. We're all working through this together. The other good thing about these shorter meetings is if there's one specific problem, we can devote a meeting to it. We can devote one of these sessions to figuring out this specific problem. If there's an issue with coming up with the parenting schedule and there's this one hiccup, let's problem solve that hiccup. Let's each come up with 3 different solutions and bring them to the next session. We do it in these smaller bursts, so sometimes you might have several sessions, but it really does keep people focused on what specific issues are.
Yeah. And I think it's, personally, I think it's cheaper that way too, because even when you're in the sessions, like it might be the second or third session by the time we're going through documents and doing our spreadsheets. But otherwise, those are things that I'm doing in my office time. And then having to talk to the client about it, and then having to talk to opposing counsel about it, and then get their responses back and get my client's responses back. And like here, we're all doing it here together. Like that 5 or 6 hours that it might be in a regular case is now becoming, a 2-hour thing. And I don't have to talk to my client separately or talk to opposing counsel separately because we're all there working towards the same thing.
No, I completely agree. Now, how are these decisions made during the process? When you're in these sessions, how are the decisions actually being made?
I mean, they're made by the parties. Like they're very much in charge. Our job as the attorneys, we know the law. And I think it's important that our clients understand what the law is, but also, we're trying to come up with ideas for them, but ultimately they're the ones in charge and they're the ones who get to make the decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, one of the perks of it is that they really are the ones coming up with some of these solutions. And sometimes they're things that are unique to their situation and not things historically we see in courtrooms. And it helps cater to their specific situation, which is really helpful.
Yes. You mentioned earlier about experts in the collaborative divorce process. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a traditional divorce, if I'm representing wife and there's a home, we might need a house appraisal. I'm getting an appraisal, opposing counsel is getting an appraisal. If there's a business valuation that needs to be done, I'm getting a business valuation. Opposing counsel is getting a business valuation. When we're in the collaborative space, we're all using the same experts. We're together hiring someone to appraise the home. We're together hiring someone to do a business valuation. If there's a financial planner that needs to get involved, we're picking that person together. So everyone has the same information. We're all working from the same starting square, which really helps make the process run smoother. And again, that's one of the things that really helps a case be cost effective, because if everyone's hiring all these different experts in a case, not only is that contentious because everyone might have a different opinion on values, but it's also very, very costly.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful when you have like a financial advisor or something. If there's a big marital estate or, just there's a lot going on financially. I mean, that's a big hiccup to a lot of clients is they want to make sure they're going to be able to be on their feet financially. Usually the other party is also worried about the same thing. And so you can have this financial advisor come in and figure out how to make it work for both of them to meet both of their goals.
Yeah, because we can give advice, but at the end of the day, we're not financial advisors. Another example of when a financial advisor can be really helpful in collaborative divorces, if you have a dependent spouse and a supporting spouse, we're trying to come up with, okay, how much money is going to be paid every month? These people were living off one income. That can be really helpful to help them kind of move those pieces and figure out what works. So who do you think collaborative divorce works the best for?
Well, I mean, I think you still have to go through the process of setting up a consult, meeting with an attorney, and talking through the options, because collaborative divorce is just an option, just like doing a separation agreement or going to mediation or through litigation. All of those are options. And so you really have to still have that initial consult to meet with the client, figure out if they're going to even be able to do the collaborative divorce, because it's not going to work if only one party is willing to participate in it. If one party's willing to be open and honest and the other one wants to, hide information and not produce all their documents and, be sneaky about it, it's not going to work. And you don't even want to go through that process. And so you have to figure out what process is going to work for each person. I mean, unfortunately, like every other legal answer, it depends.
Yeah. And I do think that collaborative divorce works really well for people who are willing to go into it with an open mind. You have to be willing to sit and listen and maybe hear things that you don't like and sit with it and still be willing to come up with a solution to some of these problems with your soon-to-be ex-spouse. That doesn't work for everyone. That doesn't work in every situation. I think people get this idea that I want to do collaborative, but it might not be a situation that is actually good for you. And I think that's why it's really important and beneficial to meet with someone who doesn't just do collaborative law, but also litigates and does these other avenues, because they can kind of help steer you on, do they think this is a good fit for you? And if so, why? If not, they can also explain to you why it might not work.
Yeah. And I had, for example, I had a consult this morning, and the client was basically saying, I don't want this to be messy. I want it to be amicable. I want the other spouse to be taken care of financially. And the other spouse also doesn't want to go to court, and they're concerned about how they're going to be able to make their finances work. And in my head, I said, this sounds like a perfect collaborative divorce case, because y'all are not sitting here saying, I want this and I want this and I don't want her to have this. It's, I want to provide for her. She's concerned about the financial aspect of it. How can we reach a resolution on this?
Yeah, I agree. And parties don't have to necessarily agree on everything at the jump to do collaborative law, but having those opinions of, okay, I want this person to be taken care of, I'm just not sure what that looks like, makes someone a perfect candidate.
Yeah.